Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Demo Days. Hope everybody's having a great week. It is Friday, so yeah, it's always great. It's best day. Wanted to introduce our esteemed speaker, Steve Weinstock. How you doing, Steve?
I'm awesome today. How are you, Garrett?
Good, good. Where are you calling in from?
I am in San Jose, California.
Oh, okay. All right, so you're definitely your day's starting. So, welcome.
It's early.
Yeah.
I'm an early riser, no worries. It's a beautiful day out, so ready for the weekend.
Yeah, man, me too. I'm excited. Fall's coming, so for all of you out there, especially if you have watched demo days before, basically what today is about is Steve will demo his platform. He's going to introduce his company. I usually let him and everybody do that. And one of the things to know is even though you are if you're watching this on LinkedIn or YouTube, we will see the comments. They come in. So feel free to ask a question to him, to me, or you can just leave comments. For the fact, if you are watching this after we have ended and we're live, you can still leave comments because we will see those. And especially, Steve, if you want us to get in touch with you. So without further ado, Steve, it's all you, man. Tell us about yourself. And yeah, what company are you with?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Garrett. So, Steve Weinstock, as mentioned, in California, San Jose, California, I am with Josys, which we'll talk about more in a moment here, but I am responsible for go-to-market activities in North America, primarily focused on MSPs, but being effectively a startup and a very small group, we wear tons of hats. So doing all kinds of different activities, but primarily responsible for go-to-market activities for this company.
So what does Josys do exactly? Just kind of a nutshell
Yeah,
it, and then
so yeah, super high level. We provide a tool for MSPs to help manage all of the cloud applications that their clients use within their organization. And clearly, as we go into the demo here, that'll become more clear. But at a high level, again, managing the applications and licenses from a standpoint of provisioning and deprovisioning, cost optimization, effectively meaning do people even use the licenses you give them, and additionally, the call it security posture around shadow IT, effectively. But why don't we go
yeah,
ahead and, if you want, if you have some more
yeah, man,
questions, feel free.
yeah.
Otherwise, let's share some slides here, and I'll try not to bore you
There
with
you
my
go.
a couple slides.
Yeah.
So title slide, we're simplifying how the MSPs work. Ultimately, MSPs, you all are generally insanely busy trying to cover multiple different companies, clients of yours, and trying to be efficient in that time. So we want to help you out there. So who are we? Who is Joseph? So first off, we are about a 3-year-old company. Roughly, it's probably closer to 150 employees at this point. We are privately held, raised our last round of funding, gosh, almost exactly a year ago now, I think, bringing us to a total of 125 million US. Today, we have over 500 paying customers, some names you've heard of, many you probably haven't, across the globe. Again, we are a global organization. We are founded and headquartered out of Japan, though. Interestingly enough, kind of a little different path for most technology companies, which tend to start, I would say, mostly in the US and then expand. We're kind of doing almost the
Mm-hmm.
exact opposite, but we do have a pretty good sized global team. And as you can see, a number of investors located here. So why are we doing what we're doing? Um, Put simply, again, the MSP world, even IT directly in a generic business out there, is incredibly strained with um, activities, let's say. Generally speaking, there really hasn't been a source of truth around SaaS assets. Again, we're referencing here cloud applications, SaaS applications, the licenses, treating those as assets, not unlike hardware in a sense for the organization. Many different tools trying to do many different things, not the least of which is every single admin console for every single app out there. Believe it or not, some companies actually track all this stuff on spreadsheets. In fact, another client of ours that I was working with, or a client of ours that I was working with, tracked all of this activity in one massive Notion document site. I'm not sure what you would call it, with tons of attachments for get this, over 200 different cloud apps that they had in their organization. So it's a mess, is put simply. And then if you bring that up to the MSP level, they're not only doing it for a company like an IT person would internally, now they're doing it for 10, 20, 30, 100 different clients, right?
Oh yeah.
Again, you have this aspect of governance, or a lack of it. Shadow IT, I know, we all know, is very rampant. Heck, I think every single person probably who's listening to this, including the two of us, have used applications that weren't necessarily approved of, let's say, just because A, we used them previously, or B, somebody told us about it and said, yeah, this thing's great, it helps me do my whatever. And you said, cool, I'm going to go for it and see how it works. So some of that can be a security issue. In the least, it's just a lack of control. And then clearly costs are rising around SaaS applications. If you look really pre-COVID, many organizations were using a bunch of different apps. COVID hits, clearly everybody and their brother needed at least some form of video conferencing, Zoom or otherwise, all kinds of different apps. And every day there's new ones coming out there, not the least of which is like ours. But point being is the cost around this is increasing dramatically. So there's a need to get a handle on these costs. And then, last but not least, I referenced kind of this aspect of going to every single portal. You go to Slack, try to manage the Slack license. You go to Zoom, you try to manage Zoom license, Salesforce, et cetera, et cetera. And it can be a very manual process for some of these on and offboarding activities. And that's part of what we're here to help with for the MSPs. Bring it all home. What does it kind of mean? Well, it's a platform that integrates in the client's IDP, their identity provider. Basically, where do they get their core email, et cetera, from, right? Microsoft, Google, et cetera. It integrates in today over 270 different cloud apps. That all comes into our platform to give you the insights from an MSP's perspective across all of your tenants. Yes, it is a multi-tenant platform to give you the control of all these applications, to help you with on and offboarding, to give you that kind of visibility around shadow IT and do something about it so you can take action on it. And then hopefully reduce some costs associated with some of this licensing. So super high level, I won't bore you with any more slides here. But at super high level, that's what we do. And, as we go on here, we'll get into a demo. But, at this point, Garrett, any questions from you or otherwise?
No, first, just right off the bat, I love this, because this is one of those things I have, I've definitely encountered this as a lot of people who are in MSPs or internal team tech managers. So I'm really interested to see how you guys are doing this, because I understand how the workspace does it, Google, and the enterprise apps, things like that with Azure, and I can see a lot of things like automated onboarding and all that. So this is definitely, I'm very interested. So I like this.
I'm glad you are interested, and I'm glad you like it. Why don't we? Do you want to jump right into kind of the demo, if you will?
Yeah, let's do it.
So let me shift over right quick. So this is our multi-tenant portal. As I mentioned, Josys' solution is geared for MSPs. Therefore, it has to be multi-tenant. You need to be able to see all of your clients in a dashboard, which clearly is what we have here. At a high level, first and foremost, we show you what we call user profiles. Effectively, what that means is all the employees of the various clients and tenants that you have, right? They're brought down into this concept of user profiles based on their identity provider. You also have visibility into all of the applications that are used by all of those clients. Now, some clients use, many of them say use Zoom, some use only one, but point being is in this at least case, we have 65 different applications across the 7 tenants within this organization. We also have visibility into devices. And I'll go into a little bit more about what that means, because I know first thing most MSPs ask is, okay, wait, devices, device management, are you an RMM, etc.? Well, we'll talk about that, so hold that thought. Alerting, numbers of tenants, etc. We also bring a high level visibility into planned on and off boarding. I stress planned because yes, there actually is on demand on and off boarding. I'm sure many clients have told an MSP, oops, we've got somebody starting in 5 minutes. Can you help provision them? Right? That's what I call unplanned. Yes, we can help with that activity as well. But in a perfect world, they give you heads up. They initiate a ticket for you to either on or off board somebody and their respective licenses. And that's what this is. Somebody starting, say, on a Monday at 8 a.m., planned on board. People being off-boarded, maybe Friday at 5 p.m. for whatever reason, planned again. The security aspect, we talked a little bit about that. So what is that? Well, effectively, shadow IT, right? So shadow IT, as I mentioned, is kind of that, hey, we, the MSP, provide clients and their employees with certain applications, but we have no idea what else they're using outside of that, unless you happen to walk past their monitor and see some application on the screen. We can give you visibility into what else they're using. Some of that might be an issue from a security perspective. Some of it might not be, but point being is we can help showcase that. We also can showcase what we call shadow users, which effectively comes down to a lot of companies have contractors, people outside their called email domain who are using applications and licenses provided by the company. A marketing person who might need access to HubSpot or something like that, who's a contractor. And we can give you visibility into that. And I'll show you some of the reasons of why that's important, in a little bit. And then there's license optimization, which essentially comes down to cost optimization. Many people have licenses that they don't use for certain applications.
Yeah.
This has exploded with COVID. Again, everybody and their brother received a Zoom or functional equivalent license because when everybody went home, they needed to be able to continue to do their business. Not everybody uses them now, needs them now. In fact, we just published actually a blog post or a press release, one of the two or both. I think it was yesterday, around some of our data that we've seen. And to put simply, across our 500 plus customers, so this is real world data, across our 500 plus customers, we have seen that approximately 35% of all Zoom licenses are not actually used. They're being paid for. They're on people's desks, so to speak, but they don't use it. Massive waste of money. Salesforce.com, Adobe, those are the next two big heavy hitters. And they're roughly 22 to 25% of all licenses are used. So there's a huge opportunity to save money and from an MSP perspective, help your clients save money. And then last but not least here is device activity. So devices being anything from laptops to phones, et cetera, and everything in between, as you can see some of the categories here across clients. Think of it more as asset management. We are not an RMM. We don't manage what OS, what patches, et cetera, are on a laptop or phone. We don't lock down a device remotely if somebody reports it lost or stolen. But what we do is work with solutions like Microsoft Intune to bring in this data and look at a full picture of the assets that employees of your client have. So this is our dashboard, right? And again, multi-tenant capable. You have visibility into all of your tenants at a high level. You have visibility into the apps they use, et cetera, cost aspects, and you can jump into any particular tenant. Alerting is another big thing. There's multiple ways to filter this down to show me all onboarding, show me all offboarding, et cetera. But point being, you can see things of note across all of your clients. And then a full listing of admins. But if you were to go and to jump into any one of these particular clients of yours, a tenant, if you will, what you get is a visibility like this. So this is the individual company that you as an MSP are managing. Now, I actually should kind of step back and say on that previous set of websites, basically our portal, the MSP portal, that's for you, the MSP, right? You know, your team, however many that is, might have access to that to help manage the clients. This also is for you in helping manage your clients. Now, that said, you might want to make one of your clients on-site people as a co-admin, if you will, in kind of a hybrid situation. Kind of up to you to do that as an MSP if you want to or not. Many do, many don't also because they're 100% outsourcing of the IT for their client. So flexibility around that functionality. But from a company perspective, we kind of revolve around really three pillars, if you will, which is users, devices, and applications. So starting from an application standpoint, as a SaaS management platform or a cloud application platform, that's kind of where everything sort of starts. I mentioned, you know, we today work with over 200, and I think it's 70, it might even be more now, different cloud apps. We have a catalog on our website, so feel free to take a look. Many of these you've heard of, some you probably haven't, given our heritage of being a Japanese founded company, headquartered company. But point being is we have a lot, and we have the big ones. And by the way, we also add roughly 5 to 15 new ones every month. Kind of depends on customer demand. Also depends on, to be honest, frankly, how hard the APIs are to work with in the other company. Some of those APIs are more difficult than others. But if a prospect, a customer has a need for app X, we can definitely look at it. If they have the right APIs, we can work with it. We can bring it in. We'll just add it to the roadmap. Usually, Garrett, I'm sorry, did you have a question, Garrett?
Yeah, so I'm looking at this app catalog. I'm familiar with APIs, all the good stuff. So this would be for me as an admin if I wanted to use it as part of the onboarding, offboarding, so I can manage that. It's not just about the discovery; it's more of the engaged, you know, management aspect. Is that right?
That's 100% correct. Yeah, 100%
Okay.
correct. And actually, where I was going to go along those lines is, let's pretend that we are onboarding. We are an MSP, and we are onboarding a new client. Where does that typically start? Well, usually it starts from their identity provider. Most cases, that's Microsoft, Azure, with Entra ID, etc. Many cases, it's also Google Workspace. Kind of depends on your client, right? But for the most part, I think, you know, the vast majority are at least in the Microsoft world or moving towards it. Point being, we can work with both, and you can ultimately have both integrated. That said, typically the IDs, the identities come from one. In this case, it's set up with Microsoft, but we also have some of the applications associated with Google. What does that identity integration do? Well, it brings in literally all the user profiles, which we'll show in a little bit, but basically think the employees of the client, their email addresses, etc. Typically, the second thing that we do from an onboarding perspective, and by the way, when I say we, this is really the MSP, right? I mean, this is an onboarding scenario typically takes, I don't know, in my experience, 15 to 30 minutes, depending on how many applications they have. So it's quite quick. And, you know, we can talk about how we help the MSP later, but Put simply, this is the MSP doing the work. So the next thing they usually do is integrate in all the other applications that their clients use. And in this case, anything with an orange box basically delineates that it has been integrated. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, with the, say, GitHub, for example, if your client uses GitHub and you click here, you will get brought with a choice of saying integrate. You do that. In some cases, it requires you to add the API key from GitHub in this case, which you would get from the management portal, to be able to do the full synchronization between our platform and GitHub, bringing in licenses, etc. And while I'm at it, the point being with that little number 1 that's up here is there's one integration. You'll note that in Google Workspace, there's 2. We can have multiple integrations with any particular app. Why is that important? Think production versus sandbox or dev platforms. It gives you, the MSP, greater visibility into where these licenses are being used or not, right? So you can do more than one. Once you go through and you integrate all that you know the client uses, stress that part, the know, what that gives you is, not surprisingly, something we call managed apps. So these are the applications that are being managed by the MSP on behalf of their client. And part of what you can see is the number of accounts that are using licenses. So for sake of argument with Asana, there are 16 licenses being used out of a pool of 21. You can also see some of the plan information, monthly cost expenditures, when some of the subscription start and end dates are, etc. across these. So visibility into any one of these. Further, you can get visibility into, just close that and make it smaller, what we call the shadow users. So again, this is effectively the people outside of this client's domain who maybe have licenses, in this case, relative to GitHub. Think contractors, developers, things like that. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But this whole set here is your set of applications that are being managed for this client of the MSP. I talked a little bit about the license optimization and why it's important because of the waste. I'm going to give you a real life example. I onboarded a client of ours who was using Salesforce.com for their CRM, and as I mentioned earlier, that's about a 22 to 25-ish% waste of licenses. They found one of their end users had not logged into Salesforce.com in over 10 months. Their license cost on a per user per month basis was approximately $150. 10 months at $150 a license. Massive waste. That's one employee, one application, and one license, right? Point being, such a huge opportunity as an MSP to be able to go to your client and say, did you know? So for sake of argument, relative to this example here in Dropbox, we have a total of 7 licenses that this company has, 6 accounts that are, quote, being used or have been assigned licenses. And what you can see is that every one of those 6 is underutilized at this point in time. In fact, 2 of them were invited, but they haven't even actually activated those licenses, right? And how do we determine, or what's sort of our classification, if you will, for not being used? Well, we set things up at basically greater than 30 days. If somebody hasn't used / logged in 30 days or longer, we classify it as underused or underutilized. And then again, this gives the MSP the opportunity to go to this client and say, hey, did you know that these 6 people aren't doing this? Why don't we remove these licenses? Why don't we save you some money? Thus, I'm providing you greater value as an MSP. More of a consultant kind of a role, if you think about it. So high level, that's license optimization. It comes across all the apps that are being managed by the MSP for this particular company, etc.
Can I?
Yeah,
let me jump in here. So first of all, when you tell me this user has been in 10 months is 150 a month, that Dave Chappelle meme, I start itching. I'm like, oh, what'd you say? That bothers me. Because
think about how much it bothers the CFO.
Oh God, I'm already anyway. The other thing too, I just want to This is awesome, and I know I'm having a lot of questions, but for those of you who are watching, if you're just now joining, you're on LinkedIn, you're on YouTube, feel free to leave comments. I will see them, and you can ask Steve, or you could just just make a comment. But I just want to put that out there. It is live, so I will definitely relay that to Steve. So yeah, go ahead, Steve. I just wanted to make sure that was out there again. Yeah,
you got it. So underutilized applications, again, just quick summary. Opportunity for the MSP to go to its client and say, did you know we have all this waste? Let's work on it. One of the other key things that we do, I talked about sort of the challenges around shadow IT. So we call this basically discovered apps. So it's that shadow IT. It's all the applications that people are using that weren't necessarily provided by their organization or by the MSP. Why is it important? Well, in some cases, you have rogue activity. Like I've been in organizations where a sales team said, we're using Zoom, even though it's a Microsoft Teams house. So they sign up for an account relative to however many salespeople are in the organization. The VP, SVP, CRO puts it on his or her credit card and just expenses it. Okay, so is it a security issue? Maybe, maybe not, but it's at least a waste issue potentially around if they have Microsoft Teams already, right? So we can give you visibility into that. So sorry, I'm trying to work on two monitors here. So that visibility, it shows, among other things, who was logging into Zoom, how were they doing it, in this case, by their Azure ID, basically their IDP provided email, if you will. How many times they did it? When was the last time they did it? And then this gives you, again, as an MSP, the opportunity to say, hey, did you know, right? And let's explore it, and let's dive in a little bit deeper. Zoom, probably not a security risk. In fact, we even bring in some information around some of their compliancy levels that they have, certifications, etc. We all know Zoom. Many applications you don't know of, so this information I think is pretty helpful to be able to help judge a relative risk around its security, potential security issues. We get this information. We have a partnership, technology partnership with Netscope that brings that in, which also helps assign that relative risk. Now, things that could be greater risk, right? Well, let's see. We've got something called Keeper and 1Password here. Both are password management solutions. Maybe this client of yours has solidified their password management strategy around LastPass, as an example, in which case, if somebody is using one of these other things, that's probably a security risk, even though they're pretty good solutions, right? Another one that most people wouldn't think about is Box. So, okay, Box is a really good solution. In fact, it's got a lot of certifications, etc. Dropbox, similar kind of a thing. But if your client is structured on Microsoft, they're probably also structured on OneDrive. And that's their repository of choice, if you will, for documents and data. If somebody's logging into Box, that could be a way that data is leaving the company. It also could be totally innocuous, right? Maybe they work with a supplier who only transfers them stuff by way of Box. So they had to have it. Point being is that some of this stuff could very well be a big security risk, and it gives you, again, the opportunity to go to your client. In addition, think about it if your client is trying to go for SOC 2 or ISO XYZ level certification, or they already have it and they're doing one of their periodic audits. That auditor most likely is going to catch stuff like this and raise it as a red flag. And this gives you, again, that opportunity to head it off at the pass before that audit happens and either remove some of these access points, if you will, applications, or at least have the story as to why it's okay to have it for that client. So again, opportunities here.
This would be good for, I've seen a lot of users will do trials, just try it, and then they just leave. They've already, and then you don't see it sometimes. especially if you're coming in after the fact. That was something where it's like, hey, this is all the stuff you have. So some people are like, oh, I don't know what that is, even though they signed up with it. They did a trial and then they didn't have the interface and they disappeared. So I think, yeah, this is interesting because I think it can really surface that sort of usage.
Totally. And you're right about the trials. I mean, our organization is a prime example of this. We were trialing a bunch of different sort of sales oriented, let me record these demo calls so we can use it from a training perspective. And so we trialed a bunch of apps, settled on one, but the 2 to 3 others that we trialed, it's like, I never really forgot about, or I did forget about it and never really did anything about it. And so that pops up literally on my company's instance of Josys as one of those examples. I also use, frankly, Calendly for, Garrett, do you want to schedule time on my calendar? And that's not provided by my company. I use the free account, but it shows up here because I used it unbeknownst to our own IT, right? So there's tons of real world examples here of all those kinds of things. And I think we're all doing it on one level or another, and some are worse than others. But from the MSP's perspective, and especially those that are trying to become more like an MSSP focused on security, this gives you another opportunity to add that value for your clients from a security posture.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So applications, I mentioned one of the other pillars is devices. Again, real quick, we are not an RMM. That said, among other things, we do integrate with solutions like Microsoft Intune to bring in all of the hardware effectively that your client's using. And you can see what devices are, quote, sitting on the shelf, so to speak, waiting for a new employee to join, what devices are in use. You can see who has them. Obviously, you can see what it is. You can see when they got it. And if you go into any, double click into any one of these things, you can even get detail potentially around warranty information. Is it still in or out of warranty? You can get information on the lifespan. So, sake of argument, you say, I don't know, laptops have a 3-year useful life. How many of those laptops are effectively ending that useful life next quarter, next year? Should I plan on budgeting refresh for those things, etc.? And you can even take a look and see who had this device prior, like maybe James had this laptop before Michael, as an example. So point being is we bring that information in.
Is this from the Azure API? I noticed you had Intune in your app catalog. Is it you have to connect Intune, or is it the Azure, or is Intune do something different?
You connect Intune. As a matter of fact, while we're at that, I'll show you the external data interface sources, etc. In this demo, as you can see, currently we are getting our IDs from Microsoft Entered ID, and it's, quote, linked versus Google, which is integrated. So the IDs aren't coming from Google in this case. But yes, we are doing devices in this case also from Microsoft Intune. 2 separate integrations, 2 separate links, 2 separate paths, I guess, if you will, of bringing data out of the Microsoft world into our platform.
Okay.
So again, most MSPs are probably still leveraging Intune for all their gross activity around devices. So why do we do this? Well, 1, visibility, and 2, really it brings home everything when you start to think about the users, the user profiles. These are the employees of this client. And again, I talked about asset management, and that really takes sort of two types of assets. In hardware devices, what people mostly think of assets, but also with licenses. Licenses are assets. Yes, they're soft, but they do have a cost associated with it. They have a massive cost in some cases for certain companies. So we give you visibility to all your users, who they are, etc., what applications they have, what devices they have. Not only that, we can give you visibility into creating different sort of slicing and dicing of who all your users are. So maybe you want to look at specific regions, countries, city, states, wherever your offices or their offices are. Maybe you want to look at all your contractors. And I talked about this earlier, why it's important. Well, by nature, contracts end, right? And one thing that often happens is people forget to remove licenses, devices, etc., from contractors. So in this case, for example, with Barbara here, for whatever her contract is with this particular company ends, you want to remove these 5 licenses that she has because one, it's a waste of money, but two, it's a potential security risk, right? In that you have to, or your client does not have a relationship with her anymore, but she may still have access to call company information. So you got to remember to do that. And that's another sort of view that you might have is create this. And people, on the end user side of things in the MSP can create all different things based off of filtering. You might want to look at a specific team or department of the company, etc. I talked about shadow users also. And these are the people external. So contractors I mentioned, well, I had already reclassified them as contractors. So what does that mean? Sake of argument, what I would do here with this particular person is I'm going to say, I'm going to make him a contractor who's already been onboarded. I can fill out all this other information, but I'm not going to in the interest of time. And when I save that, you'll see that his shadowness, if that's a real word, was removed. His category has been changed to contractor. So when I come back over to user profiles, and if I go into the contractor tab, he's now there. So it gives me that visibility. And for all these shadow folks, I can reclassify them into whatever they actually are, right? These, again, are generally speaking people outside of that client's organization who have some form of license, okay? For
That's
your
pretty
users,
cool.
yeah, it really is, because I think stuff gets lost in the weeds, right? Especially if you're an MSP. So let's talk about it this way. If you're just a company whose IT person is in charge of managing all this stuff, sales team has a contractor whose contract ended last week. Did they tell you, right? In IT, did you know to do something? Let's extend that one level up to you're the MSP managing that client. I think it's probably really unlikely that they told you. So trying to get a handle on basically who has what and corralling all that so that you can quite literally manage it for them, right, is one of the big values. And then the last thing that I haven't really talked about yet is on and offboarding, but it's obviously related as, say, contracts end. So we'll take a look at this guy named Gary here and pretend, for sake of argument, that he's going to leave the company, put in his 2 weeks notice. Today's Friday, so 2 weeks from today. Well, first off, you can already see that he had a couple applications here that were removed at one point or another, but we have the history, right? And why they were removed, who knows, but they were. So today he has, 5 applications that are currently called in use. So if he puts in his 2 weeks notice and your client sends you a ticket that says, this guy put in his 2 week notice, we want to plan for it. Well, yes, again, we can do that unplanned, whoops, we forgot, let's do it now, or we can plan for it. And then you pick your day and time, and we'll say it was 2 weeks out, and you pick whatever time on that day, probably 5 o'clock on that day. So what do you want to do? Okay, well, his 5 apps here, typically what a lot of companies do, MSP or otherwise, is they just go into Microsoft and they say, well, I'm going to block his sign in. Okay, that works. He can't log in, obviously, at that point, and he, generally speaking, can't get access to any of his applications that came by way of Microsoft. Fine, no problem. Why do you want to block it first and foremost? Because you typically need to retain data, email, calendars, OneDrive stuff, etc. So that's cool, but it doesn't do anything really with his licenses that were assigned. So from our perspective, generally speaking, for these other applications, you are going to delete the license. Teams is going to show up with a blocker sign because it's a Microsoft thing. Typically, you want to leave that too. So I go ahead and hit next. I confirm that at that day and time, it's going to do this. And now I'm going to have a scheduled task that has popped up. And that scheduled task says at that day and time, block Microsoft #1 and delete literally the license for Asana, Atlassian, Duo, and Teams. The other 2 are already deleted here or deactivated. So at that day and time, they are removed. Those licenses are removed and literally available for the next person 2 minutes later, right? To be able to provision if somebody's joining right away.
Yeah.
Big
So,
opportunity for efficiencies.
okay. I love that because I know exactly how it is going different places. And I can't even imagine doing this for multiple clients. But I do have a question. I know, does this let me know, like, say, this particular example, Asana, um, I know Jira very well. So I know when you delete somebody, it'll say delete a user, deactivate a user. For any of these, do they sort of? I guess that's just sort of you have to know what they do. But do they give you a heads up? Be like, hey, do you like say HubSpot, Salesforce? Am I able to delete, retain that information, or does it delete it? Just give me any sort of heads up of like, hey,
Yep.
this is what do you want to do with your info?
Good question. Great question, actually. The short answer is yes, and it depends. It kind of depends on the other application. Usually, like in the Asana example here, you're just deleting a license, right? The
Yeah.
data in the project management activity, et cetera, for Asana still lives with whomever is still using it.
Hmm.
If you're using something like Box or Dropbox, typically it will give you that heads up that says, do you want to delete it, i.e., it's going to take away all the content, or do you want to
Yeah.
deactivate it? Not unlike, or block, not unlike the Microsoft example I showed. Um,
Yeah.
it, it depends on the application, for one. And two, it kind of depends also on their APIs and what their structure is for how they do, let's call it onboarding and offboarding or provisioning or deprovisioning. But the short answer is, yeah, it definitely can do it.
That's
Or
cool.
we
No,
can.
I yeah, it's one of those things where you come across like, I gotta transfer it to somebody. But I like that because there's some people who are not familiar with, maybe I have a tier one coming
Yep.
in. Hey, I need you to move this user. So yeah, to give us a heads up. That's pretty slick.
Yeah, it is. And yes, you can also transfer it as well. Um, Onboarding is basically the exact same thing, only in reverse, where typically you start from providing an identity to this person. And in this case, yes, we're providing or grabbing a Microsoft 365 license, and you would provide it for this particular person, say starting next Monday or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm in the interest of time, I'm not going to fill it all out, but if I click register, it's going to literally determine when to do that based on when I decide Monday at 8 a.m. Grab that license, provide it to them. The next step typically would also be providing other applications, which is effectively the reverse of what I did from a deprovisioning. So I would go through all the managed applications. I'd say, give this new person Asana and Atlassian and Zoom and anything else that is under management, if you will, and choose when to do it. And then also how to do it. What do I mean by how? Basically, it comes down to, do I want to send emails to that person 8 a.m. on Monday when they start that says, click here, log in, change your default password, etc.? Yes, our platform can do that. It can also copy the IT manager or the admin, if you will. It can copy their boss, whomever else you want, by putting in other emails. In many cases, however, they're using SSO, in which case we can skip all that, send out emails,
Yeah.
and just effectively redirect the person to whatever the SSO site is. So at Monday at 8 a.m., it literally goes off and grabs available licenses for all those applications and assigns it to this new person. Now, point of distinction, because I know this question comes up a lot from us. Do we resell the Zoom license or the Atlassian or the whatever? No, that's not our business, right? Often that's the MSP's business, and that's great because it's a source of revenue, right? For us to kind of get in that path just means another slice of margin pie, which is already pretty slim to begin with. So no, we don't do that. What we do is grab an available license back to this whole managed applications and seeing how many licenses are in use versus how many are in use versus how many are available, etc. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where we bring in all that information. and have the ability to go grab one. So no, we don't resell them. But to kind of bring this all home right quick, and then we'll see if there's any other questions out there. What do we give you, the MSP? Well, first off, we give you visibility into all the users of your client, who they are, what apps they
Yeah.
have, what devices they have, etc. Visibility into all kinds of different levels, slicing and dicing of that organization, should you wish. Visibility into devices, who has them, how long have they had them, are they potentially in and out of warranty, is something coming up, on a useful life, all the applications we talked about, what they are that are being used, etc., that you know of, what's not being used, which is to some degree almost more important from a cost savings perspective. Visibility into all that other stuff you don't know about, right? That is being used, and taking action potentially against that because it may be a security risk. And then bringing that all home into a portal and a dashboard that is one level above, if you will, that umbrella that shows all of your clients, all of the tenants, etc., giving you a learning and such. So high level, that's what Josys is. That's what we do.
This is awesome. I've seen a lot of cloud and SaaS management. And yeah, I've seen a lot, but you guys have a very well-rounded approach to this, especially from the admin management engagement, because SaaS management is a lot. There's a lot of different layers to it. So what? So a couple questions. Can I share this portal with my clients? And if so, can I white label the portal? Is that possible?
So, I guess this kind of starts to go into some of the go-to-market motion of how we work things, and maybe I should just also pop up this last screen if you want to work with this, because it's related. Generally speaking, we, like any other application out there, have free trials. Our trials geared towards MSPs are more often than not about 60 days. It's free for the MSP to do it. There's no credit card that's needed, any POs or any of that kind of stuff. It's not like a Netflix model, if you will, where you have to put in a credit card and also on day +1 we charge you. No, we don't do that. Typically, the go-to-market strategy for us with an MSP is it's a tool for the MSP. It's a tool that they use to help manage their clients, as opposed to something like Slack or Zoom or whatever, where you may resell a license to them. That said, some of our MSP clients have expressed interest in doing just that, and having less of a hands-on approach, meaning having more of a consultant type level that says, hey, I think you ought to use this thing called Josys. Sure, we can work with you as an MSP if you want to do that sort of referral type model. No worries, just get in touch with me and us. But generally speaking, we sell to the MSP who uses it to manage their client. Licensing structure, how does it work? So for the MSP, meaning if they use it internally, which we highly encourage they do, because the best way to know how to sell the value of something is to literally use it yourself. In this case, use it to manage your own licenses as an MSP. There's no cost for you, whether you have 5 employees of your MSP, of your business, or you have 100. No big deal.
So
use it internally.
So you say five employees?
If the MSP has 5 or they have 100 employees.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, no cost. What we care about is the people within your clients. What we call, again, those user profiles. So to keep things very simple, if you have a client with 10 people in it, 10 employees of that client effectively, the licensing would be 10 licenses of Josys that you, the MSP, would need to manage them. You have another company client with 10, another 10, right? Basically, it's the number of user profiles under management. Going back to this dashboard right quick, it's basically this number up here is what it comes down to. User profiles under management. That licensing is usually done on a per license per month basis on an annual contract, though there's flexibility to that as well. We have list pricing like everybody else. Generally speaking, that starts out at $3 $1.50 a license. List pricing is what it is. There's many different opportunities for having discount structure associated with it, not the least of which is quantity. If you have literally only a need for 5 licenses, you're probably paying pretty darn close to list, right? If you have a need for 500, you're probably paying significantly less.
Yeah.
So it depends. But point being is contact us and we want to work with you through it. And then another little plug, if you will, is I'm actively looking for what I'm calling advisor partners. Many of you all have probably experienced things like customer advisory boards. Well, I'm not treating you as a customer, the MSP. I want to treat these people as a true partner of ours, one that we can get information from, guidance from as to what we should and shouldn't do from a roadmap perspective, and provide you greater visibility into what we're planning and give you more tools to be able to manage your clients. So I'm looking for a handful of advisor partners. I already have some who will go down this journey with us. And for those folks, they're going to get a very significant discount on off of list pricing that, let's say, is closer to half off for life. And again, that's for however many clients they have. And user profile. So if there's interest there, we can talk about more details about that one-on-one, but I would love to explore that with y'all.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. I'm definitely sure that there's going to be some interest out there. I'll talk with line MSPs. You know, they definitely want their voice heard. Matter of fact, we have somebody real quick. I'm bringing it up. Somebody asked, it's not bringing it up, but any bullet points to compare / contrast to ConnectWise?
Yeah, so I think let me kind of first take that up a level, give you a view of this whole space called SaaS management platforms. Again, generally speaking, nobody's ever heard of it. As a matter of fact, Gartner, who I'm sure many of y'all are familiar with, doing things like Magic Quadrant. Gartner just released their first ever Magic Quadrant for SaaS management platforms back 2 months ago, I think it was, plus or minus. And that gives you a feel for really nobody was kind of looking at this space. Today, it's a fairly fragmented space. And I think, one with Gartner bringing more visibility to it, companies like us bringing more visibility to it, and users using it, it'll start to coalesce into something that's a little bit more meaningful. So to the point of like ConnectWise, which as an organization has a ton of different products. So let's just assume it's kind of a PSA as an example here. Number one, we work with solutions like that. But number two, we all do a lot of different things ultimately. And I think when it comes down to it, if you look at the ability on our end to not only provision a license and or take it away from a person, but to maybe more importantly, see if they're actually using that license, have they ever even logged into it, and providing that visibility and actionability to say, should I take it away, right? Because it's a waste. That's something that pretty much no other platform does, ConnectWise or otherwise. The ability to showcase effectively that shadow IT. Yeah, some other companies kind of do some things like that. Clearly, through this demo or the demo I showed earlier, we do that too. We can show you and show your client what's all the other stuff they're using and help you figure out, is it a real security risk or not? Taking the cost optimization, taking the on and offboarding types of activities and bringing that into a platform, I think is pretty darn unique in this space. And again, as this early in the life, if you will, of these SaaS management platforms, we're all going to involve us and other companies as well, and bringing more functionality and more capabilities and just to bring in more value. So There's similarities, but ultimately, I think we're quite different, and I think we provide a lot of different kinds of values, especially for the MSP. Again, one caution: many of these solutions aren't even geared towards the MSP. ConnectWise is obviously, but many of the other things aren't either.
All right, yeah, thank you for that. And it doesn't have the user's name, but if you have more questions, I know we're about to wrap it up. But you feel free to leave comments, and Steve will be able to see those comments, and you guys can kind of jump into that. So, Steve, I think we're gonna start wrapping it up. But from me as a former MSP, and I'm familiar with a lot of this, and even with the current company, I think this is awesome. And I can definitely see the value here. So I'm very fascinated, because I think that one of the things about it is, I haven't really heard of Josys before this, but you guys are in. I know I'm like, hey, there's a lot of things out there that I know we could do, and I know you guys can definitely do it, because there's a lot of people I know that aren't well-rounded like this. So this. You definitely have my attention, and I think you're definitely going to get some MSP's attention. And it's, I think the other thing too is the enterprise beginnings and foundation. It's nothing to sneeze at, because it's like, hey, you guys have worked out a lot of kinks. You've worked out a lot of scenarios and situations that you're bringing into multi-tenancy. And so I like this. I'm very fascinated. So do you have any other closing thoughts, anything that you would like to leave everybody with?
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you for this opportunity. It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Hopefully get to work with you more in the future. But for the audience, obviously for the audience, feel free to scan the ScanE code and go off to, I believe, come into our world to request a more one-on-one demo, which happy to do. Do it all the time, no problem. Second, if you have other questions, other things you want to chat about relative to Josys, like Garrett said, please leave a message in the comments, if you will, and or reach out to us directly by way of the scamming. And then third, it is conference season, which is pretty clear if you look at what my current travel schedule looks like over the next basically 4 to 6 weeks. And to that end, we will be out at the MSP Summit down in Atlanta in a couple of weeks. If anybody's there, come on by, say hello, and we can chat in person. I would love to.
I may hit you up for that one. I'm in Nashville, not that far away. So well, all right, thank you for that. And for everybody who's out there, just to let you know, you go to josys.com, you can scan, or you can come to Channel Program, search for them. Because I think one of the things that you're going to see in Channel Program is we did a lot of reviews. This an MSP community, verified. We go to great lengths to make sure that they're MSPs. And the most important thing about it is the reviews are, I call, from the trenches. People who have been there, they understand what it is they're looking at. So I think definitely go check them out, check the reviews out, or go to josys.com. But if, Steve, there's nothing else, I think I'll just go ahead and start wrapping this up. So
sounds awesome.
Good.
Thanks again.
All right, brother. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and click all the buttons that need to happen. So, all right, here we go. Thank you all. I'll see y'all next week.